but I made it because it wasn't chicken nuggets and French fries. Chicken and French fries.
Oh, that's funny.
She's super piggy.
Hi. Let's see if I can move this.
I'm proud of myself that I figured out how to do it because I'm not very
Oh. Sorry, I'm moving around. I'm pet sitting, so
Oh, okay.
I'm not in my normal place. So,
that makes it a little tricky.
Yeah.
Okay, hi.
I'm gonna pull up the discussion stuff while we're waiting for Jay.
I've got dog hair all over everything.
Did you guys get that email from Angelina saying she's gonna make it? Okay.
Yeah.
So we will just go on.
It's not going
Mm-hmm. Oh man, I wish I was more prepared. I thought I was, but I'm not. There's so many like tabs to look on. Boop, boop, boop. Okay. There it is. All right, so let's wait a couple more minutes and see if Jay can hop on. How long are you pet sitting, Emily?
Till Monday morning. I started last night.
Oh, that's not too bad.
No. So.
That's good. How many pets is it?
So. I feel like I'm in a zoo.
Do you really?
I have 3 dogs. I brought up my bunnies, so I have 3 bunnies and then now a goldfish.
Oh, that's not bad.
It's
my mom
not
has so
too
many
bad.
pets. Oh my gosh. You want to know how many pets my family has? Are you ready?
Okay.
Ooh, 2 dogs now. One of them died. 2 dogs. I think like 7 or 8 cats and fish. Too many.
Yeah. So one of the dogs is food aggressive, so you can't feed the other ones around him. So she has to eat separately from the others. And then one dog is on 3 different medications.
Okay, you win.
Yeah. And then the other dog is on 1 medication that I only have to give her once a week or on Sundays. So
you win.
I'm like, I seriously have to give this dog
like a human.
Yeah. And then they used to have another bunny who had some sort of some sort of infection, and so they would put her in basically what she called an iron lung. They would put her in like this plastic box.
What?
Like storage box, and have all these meds that they would put in like this what's it called, that like turns it into a gas, and so she sits in this box
like a humidifier or something.
Yes, yeah.
At that point, is it really worth it?
Thing going.
At that point, it's like, I'm done.
Yep.
Yeah. So they used to have to give her injections, and
Yeah.
so don't have to do that anymore.
We had a cat that became diabetic.
See, at that point, it's not
Ugh.
worth it to me.
we gave for 4 months. We gave the cat shots 3 times a day.
Yeah,
Oh
see,
my gosh.
not worth
Yeah,
it.
I was like, after like 2 months, I was like, this was dumb. This cat is not this cat is not happier alive at this point.
No, let it go.
Right.
Pass on. Jesus will be there to take it with accepting arms.
It was my parents' cat. So my parents went on their mission,
Oh no.
and so we felt like, oh, we better take care of the cat. And, it was old anyways.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Yeah,
Oh.
so we were stuck for a while, and then finally we called my mom and we're like, I think it's time to put the cat down. And my mom was like, yeah, that's fine, whatever.
Oh my gosh. You're like so worried she's gonna be mad. It's okay.
I was like, I should have asked her first. I didn't even think of that. My mother she loves animals. That's the thing. They live on a farm and they have cows, and my mom like names the cows and she gets really attached to them, and she gets really sad when the butcher comes. So I thought, the cat, but I think by then she was like, yeah, the cat was old. We kind of knew it was
That's
time.
hilarious. My mom would be the same way though. Like, I can't tell her if I saw like a dead cat on the side of the road, because she'll be like, "Why didn't you stop and try and save its life?" I'm like, "Ma, like, can't do it all the time." Like,
It's terrible.
all
Like,
right,
it doesn't-
yeah. I don't know.
We're-
She's like, "Save them all." I don't know.
We're all here, by the way. Angelina can't make it. So I'm not sure.
Yeah. So, does anybody want to say the opening prayer so we can get started?
I'd say it.
Cool.
Our dearly Father, we're grateful this day that we can gather together as a team, that we can learn the teachings that will help us to be better leaders and better at business. And we are grateful for thee and for the knowledge that we have been provided, and for the knowledge that we gain from going to school at BYU Idaho. We ask that please bless that we'll have the Spirit with us to guide our discussion, and to be able to make those things that it's important for us to remember to stick in our minds. And we ask these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
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 Okay. So, let me see. Okay, I'm smart enough today. Okay, so it wants us to provide a brief synopsis of the case. And this case was interesting to me. It's a little bit different than the last one. I didn't really know how
What is the case this time?
Thomas Green, who was promoted, and then his supervisor's not a big fan of him.
It's just the one where he's a sales guy, and then he became
Yeah, really
a
quickly.
regional or whatever his
So
executive.
like 15 years, marketing something.
Yeah.
And his boss was just promoted as well.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well,
and he's
his boss had been working for the company for like years, and it took him a while
Yeah,
to go up the ladder.
yeah, his boss had been promoted from the position that he took.
Mhm.
So he ended up
Yeah.
taking over for his boss in that position. Okay, I remember the case.
Yeah, so basically, from what I kind of got from it, basically Thomas Green thinks that his boss is out to get him and doesn't like him, and so he's trying to figure out, why he doesn't like him and all this stuff. So let's see. What do you see as the key issues in this case?
There's
By the
a
way,
difference
hi,
of age, I think. Hey, hi.
You're the only
Sorry, I
person
didn't say hi. Yeah, I think that there is a difference of age, and also there's like, as you guys said, like he had that position, so like he's kind of like thinking like, I know what you're supposed to do,
Mm-hmm.
you're not doing it right, so let me help you, kind of thing. I don't know.
I hadn't thought about the age being in like a
Yeah.
point of conflict.
Because he's only 28 years old and the other guy is 45 years old. So
I think. Do you want me to list them all off?
Yeah,
What I
let's do it.
All right. From the beginning, first of all, Tom was hired by the other guy's name I think is Frank, if I remember right. Frank Davis, something like that. Tom was hired by Frank's boss.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Without Frank's input. So that's number one. The next thing is what you mentioned already. He was promoted with very little. He had very little professional experience into the position. When he came into the position, spent a week with Frank, and Frank gave some input at the end of the week. He said that he liked the fact that Tom was good at interacting with the customer, but he felt like Frank needed to work on providing some actual static data to go with it.
Mm-hmm.
However, Tom does not do any of that. The reason I think that Tom has an issue with Frank as his boss to begin with is actually a result of, I think her name is what, Diana?
Shannon.
Oh, Shannon, thank you, Shannon. I think the problem initially is that Shannon puts a seed in his mind that Frank may have it out for him to begin with. Because when he takes the job, she says, now Frank didn't have a choice in your joining him, he may not be happy working with you. So that kind of leads a little bit of a seed there to start with.
Which is very interesting.
However, Tom doesn't do anything that he's told. He doesn't do what he's told, basically. Then he has a meeting with Frank in which Frank sets some growth expectations for his division, for Tom's division.
Mm-hmm.
Tom does not agree with those expectations, and Tom says out in a public forum that he disagrees with the Frank's forecasts for his region. Frank doesn't like that, so Tom, so there's a little animosity between the two of them there. Then Tom goes into his 3-month review with Frank, and Frank is very blunt in the 3-month review. Frank is not super, I don't know if kind is the right word, but he doesn't, he's not very soft with his.
Yeah, I don't think he was very considerate, maybe.
Yeah, when he said stuff, I want to say he wasn't rude in how he said it, but he also wasn't soft. He was just very forward about his issues with Tom. So he calls Tom out. He says he sees a lot of problems with Tom at the moment. He mentions a bunch of them. Tom does not communicate with Frank about where he is or what he's doing. Tom does not. Okay, I have the list. Let me see. It's easier if I get the list. Here we go. So he doesn't communicate with him about where he is or what he's doing. He doesn't update his calendar. He doesn't send him the reports that he asks for. He doesn't answer his cell phone. Let's see. I think those are the biggest items. And then in the next one, he meets with customers, but he hasn't worked to provide any metrics or data to go with what he's selling. This is the issue with the when they meet in person in their performance review. Then Tom leaves the performance review feeling like Davis has it out for him. Tom then does not do any of those things that were in the performance review. He ignores all of the comments from the performance review from Frank. Tom instead goes out and meets with his salespeople. He comes up with a new product that he believes will help his division sell better in future years. He starts to develop this product with the product manager and the production team. He spends most of his time with the development team developing the new product. then it comes back to Frank. Frank isn't happy that Tom isn't doing any of the things that he said in his performance review. So he sends an email to, what's her name? McDonald? I can't think of her first name now. You just said it. There you go. What's that?
Shannon?
Shannon. Yeah, Shannon McDonald. He sends an email to Shannon McDonald without CCing Tom on that email, saying that he feels like Tom is not working out. He lists some concerns in the email. That email is forwarded to, or Frank is included on a follow-on email from that. So he reads the email about how he has issues with, Frank has issues with Tom. Now he feels like Tom has it out for him for his job. Now Tom has to decide what he wants to do. He has next steps to be taken. He wants to meet with McDonald about it. He feels like McDonald may not side with him, even though McDonald hired him. So he feels like McDonald should side with Tom instead of Frank because McDonald hired Tom. There's the whole rundown of what I have for all the problems between them.
So a couple of things stood out to me while you were talking. Oh, there's like an echo. One being that I feel like he's entitled. He got like promoted to his position so fast, so he doesn't feel like he needs to follow any of the expectations set by Frank. He doesn't think he needs to update his calendar. He doesn't think he needs to like inform him, finish his reports, be prepared. He just thinks, I got this job, so I'm good enough the way I've been doing it, which isn't true. I wrote down one difference between the two is that Davis is very by the book and he's very maybe old-fashioned a little bit, but Green comes into it. He's very young. He's naive. He wants to try new things, but sometimes those things aren't very well thought out. Like he doesn't figure it all out before he just does it. I also thought it was interesting that you pointed out that he was hired by Frank's superior without Frank's knowledge, and that is kind of like a red flag to me too, because if you were hired for that position, I feel like the boss should have been in on it. Like Frank should have been in on the hiring as well, like that committee. So.
Yeah, like I told you guys the story the first week about the guy who I think it was this group, right? I told you guys about the guy who got shoved onto my team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We didn't hire
so.
him. I think that the fact that we didn't have anything to do with his hiring didn't help anything at all, because we didn't trust him because we didn't know anything about him, right? And so there was that initial lack of trust to begin with on both sides. I think he felt it on his side because he didn't know us, he didn't interview with us, he didn't work with us, and we definitely felt it on our side. So I think that probably exists here as well.
I think there's like another discussion that we're doing for this class, and it was like about trust and when you move trust to a noun versus when you move it from a verb to a noun or whatever it is. And I think it's really interesting that you said that because I've noticed that too in like my work. So my previous jobs, I've never been a supervisor, so I hasn't been involved in the interviewing process. But if you bring somebody new in, they don't know you. And if there's been a couple people that I've worked with and they don't make that extra effort. They don't make the effort to try and get to know you. And then there's no trust. I'm not going to switch shifts with you. I'm not going to try and work with you because you're not making the effort to try and like involve yourself in this family, this community, whatever it is. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, so for me, as I was reading that, I don't know if it's just kind of my experiences or whatnot, but I just kind of sat there and was like, yeah, so maybe Frank does have it out for Tom. Maybe Frank's feeling like I wasn't part of the hiring process. I don't know this kid who's coming in, who I have no input whatsoever. I don't know his background really. But Tom, to me, he was still promoted. He's still the boss, and Tom's just coming in and doing whatever he wants. I feel like Frank did try to work with him and say, you know, hey, these are things that you need to work on. And he, you know, met with him after a week and sat with him and said, hey, okay, let's work on this. Then he met with him again after a period of time and said, we need to work on these issues. And then met with him a third time and there was still no improvement. I could see where Frank's getting frustrated. Whereas I feel like if Tom had made some sort of an effort into working on those areas that Frank had wanted him to work on, that Tom, you know, that Frank could see what a benefit that Tom could great ideas, and maybe he just needs a little bit more structure in that. But if willing to make some changes and some adjustments, then why is Frank gonna want to help him out as well? You know, as his superior, he does require certain things. And that's kind of in the other reading that we had, as it was talking about, like, who above you, and you need to think 2 or 3 levels above you of what kind of information do they need. What, you know, Frank's got to give reports to his superiors about what's going on with his team. If he's not getting anything from Tom, then how can he give proper reporting and accountability and, you know, those metrics if Tom's not supplying that? So it's, you know, yeah, Frank might be his direct superior, but Tom's also not giving anything to Shannon to help her out as well.
Yeah,
So,
Shannon's not getting anything from Frank because Frank's not getting anything from Tom.
exactly. So like, I feel like if Tom had made some sort of effort to improve and do some of the things that Frank had asked, Frank wouldn't be so blunt and saying, hey, he's not working out.
Mm-hmm. I think that Tom is very immature.
Yep, I was just gonna say the same thing.
I like you see it in a lot of cases, parts of the case, right? You mentioned already. He comes in feeling entitled, right?
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't listen to his superiors. He's quick to like shoot down or call somebody out in a public setting, and then worst of all that we haven't even mentioned yet, at the end of the case, he's what's it called? When you talk about someone behind their back, he's gossiping about his boss
to everybody in the office.
Yeah, to
very blatantly too.
Yeah, and I mean that's all of these are signs of immaturity.
I agree. I was just gonna say the same thing.
I think that's probably a problem, and I think that he feels like Frank has it out for him because he's immature. I don't know if I wouldn't say Frank has it out for him.
No, I don't think so. I think the way he handled it was perfectly professional. He met with him as his supervisor and said, look, these are the things I've noticed that you're not being, you're not following through with. So let's work on it. Let's get you up to speed. And I think that was fine. And then he didn't do what he was supposed to. So then he escalated. That's what any manager would do in any situation, like any superior. He'll go and try. And if the employee's still not going to listen, whether it's a lack of respect for him directly or immaturity or just being like, I don't know, but he tried. And I think he was very professional. I don't think he was out to get him at all.
Yeah. I also think Tom's forgetting that McDonald is Tom's boss, is Frank's boss, and Frank is new in his position too. He's still learning the ropes of what he has to do, right? And I know Frank has no desire to get on McDonald's bad side either. And Tom's a McDonald hire, and for him to come in and sit and target Tom just because he wasn't the one hiring him is a pretty unlikely scenario. Maybe if the hiring was done by somebody who was his equal, not his boss, then maybe it would be more common. But when it's your own boss, it's not a very common scenario for you to call out your boss's hiring and have an out for him. So I don't know. That's how I feel. So
you know something that came to my mind also is that McDonald, I think he says in a part of the reading, in the part of the lecture, he tells Tom that he needed to talk to and also like ask for advice on the position. So he tells him that directly, like, you need to work with this guy because he's gonna be your boss, and he's already had this position, and he knows what the duties are. So like rely on his advice too, and like he didn't do that either.
Yeah, he's forgetting. McDonald told Tom before he even took the job that your job is going to be different than it used to be. Like your new job is going to require you to interact with people below you and people above you. And so you're going to have to be doing jobs that you didn't previously do, like reporting and stuff like that. And Tom didn't really take that either. Like he seems like he didn't listen to that either as recommendation from McDonald either.
So then if you were in Shannon McDonald's shoes, would you have gone as far as to hire him, or would you have just been, red flags, I can't do it? Because he probably puts on a good face for an interview, right? I mean, so would you have made the mistake in interview, and hired him, or would you?
It may have been a mistake to hire him. It seems like, so I've worked with people just like Tom before.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think everyone has.
Yeah.
He's very good people person. Like throughout the case, it says it a number of times that his face-to-face interactions with everybody are very good. He has very good people skills. And I think that it would be, I'm sure he made a great impression on Shannon when they interviewed him, when he met. He was productive in his position that he was in. He obviously was wanting to get a promotion. He was working very hard, and he's also a great people person. So I think it was pretty. It's hard to blame her for her decision there. It's the other things he fails at. It's the non-people related skills that he's failing.
The actual work part of it.
Yeah, the other things he needs to do. He's got great ideas, and I don't think his ideas are wrong either. He's creative. He's got an idea of where he thinks to go. I think that Frank is not willing to believe or take, okay, so I thought about this for a while. The 10% thing, right? The 10% growth thing. Initially, I sided with Tom on that because based on what I've read, sorry, I'm interrupting you.
No, you're good. I'm just commenting.
Based on what I had read in the case information about his sector and how they were earning money and how saturated they already were as the market leader, 10% seemed to me like maybe an unrealistic expectation, even though the prior 5 years had 10% growth year over year, right? Just because the last 5 years have 10% growth doesn't mean the next 5 years are going to, right? Eventually you're going to reach a saturation point and your growth level will decrease. And this, I think, is what Tom sees. I don't think Frank is willing to believe Tom when he says it's not a realistic growth target. And I think if Tom had said after the meeting to Frank, I don't believe that 10% is realistic, and this is why, and had some actual data to support why he thought that, I think Frank would have been more inclined to say you're right. But he doesn't have any. He doesn't do any data analysis. Doesn't provide any reports, and so all he's doing is shooting from the hip. When he says, "I don't think 10% is realistic," he's shooting from the hip. He has no data to back him up. And Frank is a data man. He loves his data, and so I think that's really that's a big problem for him. If he had approached Frank and said, looking at these charts and everything else, I don't believe 10% is achievable, that would have been, I think, a different response than what he got from Frank.
Yeah, that was kind of talked about in the second reading as well, balancing inquiry and advocacy, and how when you have to present your ideas to people, not saying that you can't disagree with them, but you have to sit there and explain why and show how you came to those conclusions, whereas Tom's not doing that at all. And Frank has these years of experience in that position, and he does collect that data. He gets those figures by looking at different things, and Tom's just like, well, I don't think that's work. And he has no data to back him up. And that's what you need to do. Is you can disagree with somebody, but you need to explain your positioning and why and how you got to that point. If you don't, then you're just kind of putting up a wall and wanting to you're combative with people. It's fighting instead of just disagreeing and having a different opinion based on specific information.
I was just going to mention that maybe because of his Thomas's immaturity level, so he doesn't know how to argue with people, right? He just wants to, my opinion is right. My ideas are always right. So instead of trying to just, have a conversation with somebody, he goes straight to aggression. He goes straight to, well, my idea is right. And if you're not going to listen to my idea, then I'm not going to talk to you. Like, he just gives up. He doesn't have that mature conversation. Like, okay, well, we can agree to disagree, I guess. But he doesn't think like that. He just goes straight for the aggression, I think.
And this is a big problem. When he did this in the meeting, like when he called him out in the meeting and said, that's not a realistic growth expectation in the meeting, that was a major misstep. because not just because, and I think it's okay in a meeting. I do think it's okay to voice criticism about things. I think it's okay. The problem is that these are growth expectations being set by the guy who used to run your division, and everyone knows that you didn't set these expectations. That the guy who used to run the division set these expectations, and it's like in my job, I had a guy. I had 8 years of experience doing what I did, and I made a presentation, and I presented it to my bosses, and there was a guy there, and he said that something in my charts was wrong, and I immediately I wanted to be like, I spent 8 years doing this job, and I know it's not wrong.
Yeah.
Like there's an immediate wall you hit right there.
Of course, because
and so he's calling his boss out, saying he doesn't know what he's talking about in the position he just had 2 months earlier. So that's a real big, I would have, if I was the boss, I'd have a problem with that. I'd be like, so you're saying that I didn't know what I was doing for the last 10 years, kind of thing.
Yeah. So maybe Frank got a little bit offended, right? Because he's personally being attacked.
Yeah, he's personally being attacked. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. You obviously didn't know how to do your job for the last 10 years if you're setting these unrealistic expectations.
But expectations, okay, like goals. If goals were supposed to be easy, everybody would make goals. They wouldn't be goals. They'd just be things that you did. So there has to be a little bit of a leap, right? Like for his expectation to be 10%. Like, okay, goal.
Like, it says Tom's only thought when he hears the expectation. His only thought is that his bonuses are based on whether he reaches that.
So he's like, I'm not going to do it. Like, I'm not going to check that.
He's like, I'm losing dollars.
Yeah.
I don't reach that. I'm not going to earn as much money. That's all he sees. So, I don't know. I wouldn't work with Tom. I have issues with Tom already in the case study. I feel passionate about this case.
I just think myself, like, he just got some experience for the next job, I guess.
Yeah.
It's good experience for his next job. I like that.
But just to play the devil's advocate a little bit, so Frank's big issue with Tom was he's not changing events on his calendar. He doesn't have any information to back him. What if he's one of those people that he doesn't need to write things down, right? He can just think about it all in his head and he can just visualize it. So what if he's like, well, I don't see a problem with it because I see it in my head. Like I see how it's supposed to be worked out. But maybe this is the first time in his job where he's had to be like, okay, this is why I think this and this is why it's going to work in X, Y, Z, Mm-hmm. So maybe that's why he's having a problem with it, is because he's never had to really explain his thought process and think why this is going to work or why this isn't going to work.
I want to fight against that, but I don't think so. So I've had a hard time with this in my work situations. I want things done my way. It's a struggle from when I first started working. Like I wanted things done my way. I felt like my way was the right way.
I'm the same way.
It took me being a manager for 2 or maybe a year and a half before I was able to let go of that a little bit. So that's one of the hardest things for me. Now I do it. Like now I see somebody that works for me doing something a certain way, and I think to myself, that is going to take him 4 times longer, and that goes through my head, and I just stick it away in the back of my head. Yeah. I don't say anything, and it takes him 4 times longer. It does,
but you're avoiding conflict, right?
Yeah, but he gets it done, and I realized like there are probably people who would do that same job differently than me and get it done twice as fast as me as well. Like, I'm not going to say there's a wrong way to do it. It's just hard for me because I can tell you right now that like 7 years ago, I would have been like, don't do it that way, do it this way. You know, but now I'm like, you know, I just give them the task. However they're going to do it, they're going to do it. And they'll get it done. As long as they get it done and get it to me when I need it, I don't care. It's really hard for me still. Like I really, with my kids, it's the worst. Oh, I am the worst dad sometimes. I tell you right now, it's the worst. When my son is doing math and he's doing it like, it's taking him like 30 minutes to do a math problem. Oh man, I know that I'm worse at that aspect of parenting than I am at that aspect of managing in my workplace.
Could you care more?
I'm so much. I feel bad afterwards too. Like my son and I will like butt heads, and I was like, "Do it this way. You do it this way." And I know, like afterwards, I feel bad. Like I'm like, "Oh, I should just let him do it his way." But
it's like, Dad, they taught me this way at school.
Yeah,
they taught me to do it the old way.
It's driving me crazy. That's not how my teacher taught me to do it. Like, oh, your teacher's an idiot.
How old are your kids?
You know.
Yeah.
Hey, how old are your kids? By the way.
My oldest is 12.
Oh yeah.
And my youngest is 1, but I got it's my 12-year-old and my 10-year-old. It's my 12-year-old that I struggle most with though, because he's stubborn. He's really stubborn.
His teacher knows. You don't know anything. It's all about his teacher.
It's hard. He'll do like a math homework assignment for like 6 hours. I'm like,
wow. Dedicated. I would give up.
Dedication.
Yeah, so there's my issue, and I know I'm bad at it, but I think Frank's probably a little bit like me in that regards. So I don't know if Tom's way is wrong. Oh, so full circle. Sorry. I don't know if Tom's way is wrong. I would have said Tom's way is wrong, like when I was younger.
I completely agree with you.
Tom's wrong.
I completely agree with you. I think he's wrong. Because if he were in Frank's position, he could do it however he wanted, because at that point he's doing that's his thing. He's the boss, right? My brother is like, we'll be doing homework together. He's a couple years younger than me, but he's in college too. So, okay, how'd you get this answer? Well, I don't know. I just did it. Like it just popped in my head. Like, I don't know. I'm like, okay, my brain doesn't work like that. You have to explain it to me. Like, I don't get it. He's like, well, how do you not get it? Didn't you listen to the lecture? Like, didn't your teacher tell you that? I'm like, I took like 5 pages of notes and I'm still looking, and he's like, oh yeah, that's the answer. I'm just like, my brain doesn't work like that. You got to take it slower. And I don't think that Tom really understood that. Like, everybody's a little different the way they think. And I think he needed to just take it a lot slower with him, if that's how he is. I don't know. But
yeah, I mean, I think there are some things that, okay, so I don't think that Tom's way of doing things is necessarily bad, except for a couple of things. Like, he has to provide reports to his bosses when they're needed. Mm-hmm. Like, that's just, like, it doesn't matter if he's the lowest person on the totem pole. If his boss tells him he needs a report by a certain date, he better have that report by that date, right? I mean, that's just poor. That's just bad work. Too. Yeah, that's just bad work. As far as like where he is and scheduling and things like that, I think that he has some autonomy there, but his boss obviously is trying to get a handle on his division, and he's not communicating it. And so his boss is looking for ways to find that information out, and he's not. I think that's where that's coming from. I think if he was better at communicating with his boss what's going on in his division, then he wouldn't have this problem with like updating his calendar or stuff like that. I kind of think that's a little nitpicky.
I agree with you.
But I think that because he doesn't know, he doesn't have the trust already there, and his boss doesn't know what's going on. Mm-hmm. That I think that this is kind of a secondary result of that. It's a little nitpicky though.
So, how do the actions of Thomas Green differ from the expectations of Frank?
I'm gonna keep quiet on this one. Sorry.
in my opinion, I think he was expecting him to be kind of like in his way, acting his way, and also like do the reports, to the information data, getting things done. But he was more like, Tom was more like just going to talk to the clients, not doing the reports, not doing the data, not submitting things. And I don't know, I think it's like not good communication with the boss and the employee, I guess.
I think for me, one of the ways that they differed is that, Tom, like I kind of said this in the beginning, Frank was kind of willing to work with Tom and say, okay, let's work on these things that we have that I need and see what we can do. And Tom just said he would and didn't do anything. And that is I think that's a big issue for any kind of a manager, any kind of a coworker. If somebody says that they're going to work on something and try to improve and do something, and then they just don't do it, nobody's going to want to work with you, no matter what you can pull off. If his big idea does end up bringing in lots of revenue for the company and does being a great stream for them and a new avenue of opportunities for them, it's still kind of tainted because Tom had he's got all these other issues in the background. Now that's not saying that you can't struggle with your coworkers and always get 100% what you want, but you got to make an effort. And I don't see that I see Frank's trying to make an effort with him. But Tom's not really making an effort to meet Frank in the middle or anybody. And he's even into some of the things that he's thinking about. He's saying, well, I haven't yet met with Shannon, so I got to figure out if I'm even going to be here or if I need to start looking for another job. And it's like, well, maybe you should meet with Shannon and figure out what's going on and figure out what their expectations of you are before you start jumping to conclusions and jumping ahead. You need to kind of, and maybe that's what Frank or Tom needs, is for them to sit down and say, these are what your expectation or what we expect of you, and you need to work on these. And there needs to be some sort of improvement in such and such a time frame, or we're letting you go.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that Tom needs to be or have that directness for him to kind of see that improvement.
I think just listening to both your guys' comments really quick, and then I'll let you talk. Two things stuck out to me in particular is the lack of communication, like Jay was mentioning earlier. There's no communication between the two of them. They don't know what they want from each other. Frank tries, and then Tom doesn't say anything back. Like, there's no line of communications there. And another thing, Emily, that you mentioned is if he's not going to follow through with what he says he's going to, there's no trust. Frank can't trust Tom to go through with anything if he can never meet those deadlines, if he can never, as nitpicky as it is, update his calendar. Like, he can't, because there's no trust. He's not following through. He can't rely on him.
I agree.
So, who is mostly at fault for the state of the current situation?
Shannon.
Why did I know you were going to bring her back up?
I mean, Tom is mostly at fault. I was saying that jokingly, but Shannon certainly has. She has sowed the seed in Tom before he even starts the job.
Mm-hmm. That was her first mistake, I think.
Mm-hmm. That hurt because he was immature. If it was somebody who was more mature, had more experience, maybe more life experience, maybe in this kind of thing, I think that wouldn't have been much of an issue. But it obviously was an issue for him starting out. So I think that's kind of the start point of the whole thing. But Tom is certainly.
Well, I think a lot of it
Tom
too
worked for me,
was,
I'd be just like Frank. I'd be like, I'm done with you.
well, I think a lot of it too, just like Emily mentioned, was no expectations were laid out. So maybe it is Shannon and maybe it's Frank also. They never said like at the beginning of when he got hired, like this is what we expect of you and this is what you need to get done. But he got those expectations a week into the job when he was already kind of struggling. I don't think that they were laid out in the beginning.
Right. Yeah, that was one thing I was going to say too was, I mean, you can kind of say all three of them are because they don't, there isn't that communication. You know, they're not discussing what their expectations are. You know, even on Tom's side, he's not communicating to Frank or Shannon about what his expectations are of what he's expecting to do, what he thinks his job is, and maybe that's where they need that clarification to come in.
I 100% agree. I think that Frank is, so Tom is a little bit set up to fail, a little bit. Like,
A little bit.
because a week is not very long to train somebody. And then to expect them to succeed with no further training is pretty unrealistic. Tom is terrible at handling that. If you don't know how to do your job, you better ask somebody.
Reach out, make that.
There are other people. There's two other people who do the same job as him, right, in the org chart, and he can reach out to them and say, "Hey, I'm new." They may not be warm to him either because he's young and mature. But I mean, humility goes a long way with a lot of people. Like if you go to them and say, "I don't know what I'm doing here," can you help me know how I'm supposed to do this or what I'm supposed to do here? Most people are willing to say, "Yeah, this is how you do it," or "Here's an example of what I've done before," that kind of stuff.
Kind of feeds their ego too a little bit. Like, I need your help. Will you help me? Because you've been doing this for so long. You know what you're doing.
I think it does. Yeah.
I was gonna say, I can't tell you how many times I go to people at work and I'm just like, I don't know what I'm doing, so please help. And it takes me a little bit of while before I get comfortable and confident with what I'm doing, but it's still like, okay, now they know that I have no idea and they're gonna give me some leniency there while I'm learning. Whereas if I never asked, they're just gonna assume that I'm gonna know what I'm doing, and then they're gonna get frustrated because I'm not producing what they want me to.
Mm-hmm.
Their expectations aren't being met, and I'm sitting there twiddling my thumbs going, I hope I don't fail, when it's like I needed to ask. So Tom should be asking questions.
And just adding to that, to what you guys said, I think there would be like more trust and more communication between them just by asking, like, what should I do in this position? What should I do in this other thing? Like, he would probably show more interest in that and more trust between both of them.
Yeah.
All right. What actions would you take if you were Thomas Green?
Update my resume. I think it's a little early for him to get fired. He's only been in the position for a few months now. It's pretty. I think his chances of getting fired at this point are pretty slim. I think you guys were right when you said that he probably needs to go talk to Shannon and come up with some type of plan of action to improve and get some deadlines on those. I think that's probably what would happen if he goes to Shannon. I doubt they'd fire him. He's too young in his job. Mm-hmm. I think if he does that and 3 more months go by and he hasn't had any improvement, I think that's probably a point where he should really look for another job. But
I agree. I think it's too premature. It's a little premature for him to get fired just yet.
It's a little early.
He needs to be humble. And, sit there and be like, okay, really take a look at himself and how he needs to look at it. And yeah, maybe he's not being treated the way that he thinks he should be, but then he also needs to look at it and say, okay, how am I contributing to this situation? What can I do to improve it? And what can I do to improve myself So that way I'm not looking for another job and I can turn this into a great opportunity. You know, he needs to.
He's like one of those annoying high school kids who, everyone was always saying how great they were all the time.
Oh yeah,
You know?
yeah.
That's what he's like. He's like one of those kids. And then the first person who comes up and is like, you know, you're not all that. He's like, oh, you hate me. You know, I mean, this is like the first time anyone said he's not all that. He's pride's an issue here. He needs to humble himself.
Yep, I think some self-reflecting needs to happen too. To realize, like, maybe I'm contributing to this problem. Well, if you guys have nothing else to say, I think we can end. And then I won't be here next week. I have to work. So you'll have to go on without me. I'll work on my comedy for the next couple of weeks. But I think that's it. I think we're good, unless you guys have anything you want to say. And I think, Jay, you're leading next week, is what I heard.
Am I? I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know how we did it, because I
don't.
kind of
Yeah,
snatched
I
it.
don't think we
I
kind of established the way.
I think the schedule stays the same.
Okay.
So then it's me next.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Same time, same place. I will not be here, but it'll be good.
All right.
But where is
So
the
thanks.
schedule?
Angelina, I think, emailed it.
Yeah, she did.
You did, yeah.
So
Yeah.
check your inbox. Should be there.
Yeah, if you don't have it, let us know. And one of us will send us out, because I know I've got it.
Sounds
Yeah, I'll
good.
look for it.
Yeah, Angelina, I have it right here. I'll let you know when yours is really fast. Let me open it up. It is.
I think it's me, then Angelina, and then back to you, Irving.
Okay.
So you got a few.
So
weeks.
3 more weeks, yeah.
Is it the group leader sign up or something?
Yeah, so the group leader has to lead the discussion, and then the group leader also has a write-up, I think, that they have to do at the end. And the group leader also has to post the video
Mhm.
on somewhere, message board, I don't know. Message
It's on
board?
the discussion board, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I think that's it.
So I think we're all good then. Thanks, guys.
Oh, did you want to do the rest of the story? You have the rest of the story in this thing.
Okay, keep going.
It's at the very bottom of that page.
Oh, conclusion right here.
Yeah, under the conclusion, it has the rest of the story.
Okay. After McDonald's February 5th, 2008 email, Green took the offensive against his boss. He crafted a series of memorandums,
Memos, yeah.
emails, reports, and projections that exposed inaccuracies in creative forecasting. This data enabled Green to build some alliances with other marketing personnel who used the data to ultimately side with him. On April 4th, it was announced that Frank Davis was being moved laterally to an undefined special project. However, Green's tactics were seen as overly brutal by many in the company, and although he won the battle against his boss, his career was irreparably harmed. McDonald distanced herself from him. By July 2008, Green announced he was resigning from his position to pursue full-time studies for an MBA. We can only speculate what would have occurred if Green had tried to help Davis work out the discrepancies and problems with forecasts. Perhaps both would have succeeded.
Wow. That's pretty brutal.
Yeah, definitely not what we expected. He won.
Tom.
How did he win? So crazy.
It's crazy that he went to war so fast.
I think Frank just kind of like, he was just like, whatever. It's not worth it. Not worth trying to smear his name in the dirt, you know?
Yeah, I'm sure that Frank was hurt initially by the whole thing. Like his career was hurt a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
but in the end, he probably ended up better off than Tom. That's brutal. Have you guys ever been in your office? Have you guys ever been in a political battle like that before?
Mm-mm.
I used to work for a guy who was in a political battle. I hated my job so much.
Wow, that's crazy.
Worst job I ever had. In fact, it's the same it's the same organization I work for now.
What?
Yeah, but it was the worst. I used to every morning I'd wake up and be like, I'm just gonna get sick today. It was the worst job. I go in every day and we'd have, I kid you not, he treated it like a battle. We'd walk into his office in the morning, and he at 8 in the morning we had a meeting every morning at 8 in the morning, and he would say, "All right, men, here's the battle plan for the day."
Oh my gosh.
Every day.
Here are your marching orders. Get ready.
He had a board on the side of his board, and he'd write down. And he was at war with 2 managers, and there were 3 of them, and they were all trying to get the same position, and they were all at war with each other. And on his board, on his whiteboard, he would have everything that the other managers were saying or doing on his message board.
Oh my gosh.
And we would come in, and so at the time I was a system analyst, and I think there were, he had like 12 or 14 people working for him, something like that. But there were like 6 of us that were analyst type people. And so he'd sit down with the 6 of us and he'd say, "This is what they're doing. I want to know everything they're doing wrong."
Oh my god.
And then he'd have another column and he'd say, "This is what they're saying we're doing wrong, and I need you guys to prove that they don't know what they're talking about."
Wow.
That was my job every day.
It's like a little bit of psychological warfare there.
It was psychotic. I hated my job so much.
Wow.
I came in every day, and I wouldn't do some of it. Like I didn't feel like, I felt morally like it was wrong. Like when their teams were working on projects, I was like, "There's no way I'm going to sabotage somebody else's work or project. Like I wouldn't do it." So then I just act like I'd forgotten to do it. I hated it so much. And then when I had to defend my own work, I'd be like, okay, I'd go and like find all this outside. It was like a research paper every day. I'd like write a research paper about why what we were doing was the right thing to do. And like I'd send it over and I'd say, "This is like why." I would defend us. I didn't have a problem with that so much. I hated it, but I'd never like I couldn't sabotage them. I didn't feel right about it. And then they what else did they do? Oh, it's a long story, but it's so entertaining. Anyways, eventually the head manager hated my boss, hated him. And one day he got called into the office, and we could hear yelling all the way down the hallway, like just screaming, curse words, everything. And we didn't know what was going on. We just knew he was in there with it wasn't his boss. It was his boss's boss.
Oh gosh.
And we were like, "Oh, I don't know what's going on in there." And he came out and he was like, he was crying a little bit. I'm not kidding. Like not sobbing, but like his eyes were all red.
Oh my gosh.
It was awful. I felt sick to my stomach. I almost quit.
So did he not get the job?
So I worked for him for 5 months. I can't believe I lasted that long. I hated it so much. But I worked for him for 5 months, and then he took a job at another organization. And so we were moved from under him. They eliminated his position. They just got rid of it.
Oh wow.
And we were moved under one of the other bosses that were at war.
What?
I'm not doing this anymore. Like I couldn't believe it. So there were 2 bosses at war with each other. I hated it. It was a mess.
That's crazy.
But that boss was better. Like I came in there, and he like assigned us the projects, and he didn't like get in the way, and he was above the fray a little bit. But by then he'd won the war, kind of. He knew.
Oh, so he was cool.
He knew he'd won.
Yeah, so he didn't care.
I didn't work for him when the battle was even. I only worked for him after he knew he'd won the battle. And then it was okay to work for him. And he still works there. He's still my boss. That guy is.
Wow.
In a different capacity. He got promoted, and then I moved groups, and he has a lot of people that report to him. His organization is probably 3,000 people that report to him.
Wow.
and so I report to him as well. He's one of my direct reports. But it was so I know office politics, and it sucks. Like,
I can't even believe how that ended.
it's not for me. I hated it so much. I hate my job every day. I hate my job. If I had to go back and do it all over again, I'd probably quit. I'd probably quit. Like to have a do over again. So I'm scared of office politics now. Like I don't know what would happen if somebody decided to go to war with me. I don't know what I'd do. I'd be like,
Please.
I've seen how this goes.
I'll wave a white flag.
Yeah, it doesn't go well. I don't know.
That's
Anyways.
so funny. Well, I think, friends, we're done.
Thanks,
With
guys.
2 minutes to spare.
I don't know. Have a good
Talk to you
night.
guys Monday.
All right, we'll see you.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Cheers.